Well, Terry, thanks for doing this. It's amazing to put a name and a face with somebody who created this logo, one that we've seen every day now for more than 30 years. I imagine when you designed this logo, it probably changed your life. We'll talk about the after part in just a second. Who were you and what were you doing before you created the Sharks logo?
I was, I'd gone to Stanford. I was there on a basketball scholarship, so I played basketball there. And as you know, most people who go to Stanford, right, you're either pre-med, right, engineering,
Yeah.
right, or econ, so you're either going into business or medical school, right?
Right.
And here I was saying I was playing basketball, but no, I'm going to be an artist. So where was I? What was I doing? Well, I'd started working in a comic book store, being, in the art, and I enjoyed that. And then I started doing things for Stanford, for the athletic department. So I was walking in, as an ex-athlete, saying, hey, let me do some things for you.
I imagine like when you come up with the Sharks logo, when you're offered the opportunity to do this is the big thing of your life at that point? Or did you know it was at that point?
Actually, it wasn't,
Really?
believe it or not.
Okay.
So again, Stanford, I've been doing things for them. At that time, this is late 70s, early 80s. And so when you saw any kind of sports art or posters around town, they were usually photographs and things like that. Well, I started doing paintings for the Stanford Athletic Department. So what was happening is I was doing these paintings. I was creating posters and stuff for them that would go around town. But my concept was we were just getting into the stage where people have cubicles.
Okay.
So my whole idea was let's create art so that after the season's over, it will stay in people's cubicles.
Okay.
So this was my way, because I was trying to figure out how do I get paid to do this. So I would
It wasn't a job really yet.
No,
okay.
that's right. So I would go and basically, look, I can help you get sponsors. So, we had Apple and Coca-Cola. They would pay for it, and I could convince them that the poster is going to stay up long after the event.
Right.
So you'd even walk into cubicle, and they were still up years later.
Okay.
But that's how I got started. So to answer your question, I had also done some stuff for Adidas at that time. So I'd done a painting of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar
Okay.
when he broke the scoring record.
Got it.
And so that was, at the time,
The big
probably
one.
the bigger piece, because
Got
that
it.
ended up in the Basketball Hall of Fame for a little while.
So you weren't new to this background and profession when you were offered the opportunity to come up with the Sharks logo. But tell me if I'm right here, you started working on this or you were courted to do this before there was even the name Sharks?
Yeah, what had happened was there was, I guess, what did they call it? California hockey something or other.
Right, before it was the Sharks.
Bay Area hockey.
Right.
What had happened is I was doing a talk at an event, and Matt Levin was there, who
Okay.
at the time was somebody who was in sports, kind of one of the sports gurus when it came to marketing and things. And he saw me speak, and long story, they said, hey, because at that time nobody knew me for logos.
Right.
And
You were just an artist.
I was just an artist.
Okay.
I was showing what we had done for other people, and kind of my approach was different. For anybody who's seen my artwork, it was I call it sports fantasy. So we were doing things that nobody else was doing, and so they saw that and said, "Hey, would you be interested?" And I said, "Sure."
In doing our logo.
In doing a logo.
Now, they didn't have the name Sharks yet, though.
They did not have the
Because it
name.
was a fan contest that helped decide the name Sharks.
In theory, it was a fan contest.
It was known as a fan contest. Here we go. The true story.
Well, again,
They might have angled it in the way they wanted.
they were trying to figure out
Yeah.
what the name was, what they were going to do. And as you know,
Yeah.
right, the San Jose SAP didn't exist at the time,
Right.
so they played originally at the Cow Palace.
Right.
But when we first started, it was about, who is this team? What do we want to do? So yes, they were going through names. They were doing focus groups, trying to figure out what the names were.
Right.
All that kind of stuff.
But you were going to come up with the logo no matter what the name was going to be. It was you were at least in that mix, right?
Yeah, I was involved in the conversations early on when
Yeah.
it had to come with name, when it had to come with, logo and things like that. And, at that time, my recommendation, because if you remember, that was also a time where people were picking some, esoteric names.
Yeah.
If you think about the USFL, you had the Sun, the Bell, things like that.
Right.
And part of it is how do you represent those things,
Right.
So for me, I was, pushing heavily towards let's have something that's tangible.
A shark.
Anything
Okay,
that's
yeah.
tangible,
Yeah.
right? Instead of, kind of like I said, an esoteric name.
And so they finally come up with sharks. But from what I also understand, teal you associate with San Jose hockey. And other teams use teal eventually, the Charlotte Hornets, the Florida Marlins, Jacksonville Jaguars. But the Sharks were the first to use teal. But tell me if this is right. Initially, the Sharks' main color was going to be red, as in blood red. Is that right?
Well, as we were looking at the colors,
Yeah.
right? So, some of the early, in fact, I think you've seen some of those ones. One of the names was Tiger Sharks, right?
Yeah.
So that you'll see one of the early designs was green, like a lime green and black and white with kind of a tiger stripe pattern on it. So, colors were still, kind of up in the air. I was probably one of the stronger people in terms of pushing for red because it made sense.
Really?
Yes, and the reason is if you think about a shark,
It creates red by
blood in
chewing
the water,
something up.
Thank you, right? So it makes perfect sense.
Okay.
The other thing you think about, I do when you're designing these things, is longevity, right? So if you think about
It's a primary color, red.
colors
is,
that
right?
will stand the test
Yeah,
of time,
yeah.
right? And so that's why when you start to think about it, but really one of the main reasons we went in that direction, and you ask if anybody else had teal, one of the people in the organizations was a big Miami Dolphin fan,
Okay. Oh, that's right.
right?
Well, they
And
had
so
teal too.
They had kind of a tealish orange, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so, it was one of the colors they wanted us to try.
And so you weren't opposed to teal when they said, you know
no.
what, let's steer it this direction. That
No,
was an
no.
opportunity.
The whole thing is if you are going to go with those colors, it's find one that works.
Yeah.
So if you remember, if you look now, the original teal that was used,
Right. Lighter shade.
I've teased you about non-photo blue. One of the problems that they had with the original teal uniforms is they did not work very well on television at that time.
Okay. Right.
Right,
Too
so-
close to blue. Yeah.
Yeah. So-
Chroma keying. We're talking about chroma keying here, if that's so deep. So when you come up with that initial logo, like this
Yeah.
is the one that people know these days.
Correct.
But the original was not a totally different departure from this. Were computers prominent back then? The first logo, was it designed and mastered by hand, or was it on a computer program? We're talking early 90s here.
Yeah, everything that I did, was always by hand.
Really?
All my paintings, all the logos, everything that we're doing was by hand.
So how do you make the initial logo by hand, and then is there like a master version of it that gets scanned, or how do you do that?
Well, what you'll end up doing now is, and I'm trying to think what it was back then because that was 35 years ago what we did.
Did you do it on a stone?
Well, think of it back then when you had to reproduce something, you would do it by hand.
Right.
This is pre-computer and stuff. So literally you were doing things, you might take an X-Acto blade or you're using, photography
Right.
processes where you do something and take a picture
It's
of
like
it.
splicing film almost.
Yeah. So it was a very different
Okay.
process back then.
And then who eventually did the final approval? Who were you presenting this to? Was it a group of people who said, that's the one right there. That's the final logo we want to go with?
Yeah, well, again, the Sharks had with Matt Levin, the Sharks organization, again, they had people who were going to make that decision. And, when we first started, there were three logos that they were using in their focus groups.
Right.
One was the one that you saw. The other one, I think you've seen some of the images of it, was a shark with a hockey stick. It was a more cartoon version.
Right.
As I look behind you, I can see it.
So cool to have all the things that did and did not make it behind us right now.
But it was, and so in the focus groups, that cartoon shark with the hockey stick
Was better?
it was kind of taking the lead in the
Wow.
focus groups. But at the time, the team didn't want anything too cartoony.
Right.
At that time, there was really only one NHL logo like that. It was probably the old Penguins logo.
Right.
And so again, this was how are you going to, what do the guys want to wear? How are you going
Right.
to represent? Long story short, they made the decision to go, in the other direction, which, when it first came out, we caught a lot of heat for too.
And there's also something that was apparently not controversial with the team, but the league didn't like the broken hockey stick. Like the old logo has it too, the shark chomping
Yeah.
through the stick.
Yeah.
There was some kickback on that too?
Yeah, again, what you have to remember.
That's crazy.
No,
That's a problem.
But think about the time.
Yeah.
Right? Hockey, there were no, I'm trying to think, there were no teams west of the Mississippi unless you go up into Canada.
Oh, the LA Kings were around.
LA
too,
Kings
right?
were there, right?
Yeah.
Other than that, was there
Yeah.
anybody else?
Yeah.
What was the next team, right?
Yeah. That's
And
right.
so-
because the Avs hadn't even moved to Denver yet at that point. Yeah.
They didn't exist.
Arizona
They didn't
did not
exist.
exist.
Yeah, so a lot of teams you're naming, Dallas,
Yeah.
none of those teams
St.
exist.
Louis was probably as west as it got.
There you go.
Yeah. Or Detroit, maybe. Detroit was in the Western Conference.
So part of this was when you're looking at what you're doing, it was, okay, hockey is a traditional East Coast, all
Right.
of those types of stuff. We've run into the same issues when we've done stuff for soccer and other leagues, right? There's kind of traditions that people like to hold. Same thing when it came to doing the uniforms and all that kind of stuff. There were traditions. My whole pitch to them when we were doing this was, A, we're in California.
Yeah.
We are doing something where most Californians did not grow up with hockey.
Right.
The other side of it was you had to look at the state of the NHL when it came to merchandising. You know, all of the stuff that we design, and this is, I think, where we kind of changed the game a little bit for people, is I believe that logos should tell a story. At the time, logos were all designed to kind of represent an area or a team, but they weren't necessarily designed to tell a story, and they weren't really designed around the story of the fan base. So this is why, again, I didn't need having a name that's esoteric.
Yeah.
Means that fewer people can relate to it.
Sure.
If I say something like, okay, if I say something like the Stealth.
What is that?
Which we also did the logo for, by
Right,
the way.
right.
But what comes to mind? What does
Right.
it mean? So here we needed something, number one, is tangible. Number two, most of this is really pre-hockey having television contracts.
Yeah.
So most of the revenue was coming from people who are coming to the games. It's putting butts in the seats.
Wasn't from the merchandise.
No,
yet,
because
yet.
nobody was thinking this way.
Right.
And I am a commercial artist. We design stuff that sells.
Right.
And I'm also looking at that time, your ability to sign players, your ability from a franchise to find. You have to also remember that the NHL properties did not exist.
Right.
For those of you who are out there who don't know what that means, is all of the leagues have a property division. NFL, NBA, all that kind of stuff. That means all the owners split the revenue from logos, from T-shirts, from hats, from all those things.
Merch, as the kids
From
call
merchandise.
it these days.
So
yeah,
when
right.
we did the Sharks logo,
Yeah.
NHL properties did not exist.
Right.
That means the Sharks were going to get all of that revenue.
Oh,
Which
man.
meant that
Yeah.
it could give them an advantage when it came to signing players and all that. So there's a business side to
Printing money with that Sharks logo in the early 90s. So that's my next question. This logo was everywhere.
Yeah.
Teal was everywhere. The royal family across the pond were wearing Sharks gear.
Yeah.
San Jose, California, are you serious? You must have felt kind of like a rock star. 92, 93, 94. This logo is now out there. Everybody's sporting it. Terry, I've got a jacket in the other room from the 90s. Like I wore it to middle school. I keep it. Everybody had the Sharks logo, even if they didn't even know what hockey was. How did it make you feel when all of a sudden that was like everywhere?
You know, you feel flattered.
Yeah.
You feel a little vindicated because you are, you know, somebody's taking a chance on something that you're doing.
Yeah.
When that logo first came out, again, traditional hockey people, you know, it was panned.
Sure.
You can go back and read some of the reviews. you
Yeah.
know. I can remember some of them, amateurish, childish, boorish.
That was before social media.
Yes, this was stuff that was going to be, you know, in articles in like, you know, the New York Times. and things.
Right.
But, you know, what it was is it was different.
Yeah.
The stuff that we tend to do tends to be kind of cutting edge,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, when I work on things, usually, you know, it's my company and there are other artists involved, John Zalesnik, Norm Felkley, these are guys I've known for years. They still work with me today, so we do stuff. But you're asking, you know, how did I feel? You know, as a diehard sports fan, I think it's one of those things you think of. You'd like to, at some point, get to the point where you're playing in the league, right?
Sure.
So I'm playing in Stanford, and I'm thinking, you know, my goal, I want to get to the NBA. And then you think, okay, I want to be a professional athlete, and then you're working towards that goal. So to see something that you've done at the professional level, is extremely gratifying. To see people walking around
Yeah,
with something you've done
absolutely.
is extremely gratifying. And we'll get to it at a point, but we've done enough stuff in the Bay Area where there was a time where I could not open a newspaper without seeing one of my logos. I could not be on the freeway without seeing one of my bumper stickers. I could not be in a schoolyard or any place, because at one point we literally had almost all the teams in the Bay Area were sporting our stuff.
You designed the logo of the high school sports television show that was my very first job, and I didn't even know it until we started talking. No, you were obviously doing a lot of things back then. But I'll fast forward to the mid to late 2000s. You're asked to redo the Sharks logo. It's got to be interesting, almost like an artist, musician maybe remixing the song that they made that was so popular. How do you improve upon this? How did you start to go about that job of creating this from the original logo?
A lot of discussion, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But it wasn't necessarily coming from me. What it was the team wanted to update.
Yeah.
I felt that it needed to be updated. When we did the first, remember, it was all done by hand.
Now you could use a computer.
Now we could use a computer. But the biggest thing was, and it was interesting how it worked out. So that first logo, if you compare the first from the second, the teeth, the lines on the stick, all that kind of stuff, here's how it worked out to our benefit. It made it very difficult to counterfeit. So even though it was selling a lot, I think at the time it was only, only the Chicago Bulls logo was outselling the Sharks logo worldwide at one point.
Amazing.
But, so to come back and do a second version, the team wanted to do something different. And, my background was such as, let's, if I'm a fan, and I'm approached this from a fan perspective, the fans have a lot of loyalty.
Yeah.
A lot of, this has been around. This is what they've known.
It had existed at that point long enough to become a thing, like to identify with that thing.
And I also reminded them, and you may remember this, but when the Sharks logo debuted, the 49ers, about 2 weeks later, revealed their new 49ers logo.
And it did not go well.
They changed it within 2 or 3 weeks. They went back to the old one. So
Just kidding, we're not doing that one. I remember that.
Yes. And so I reminded them very strongly, say, look, you have a strong fan base. They've been supporting this. This is their identity. They identified this with this team, with this color and all that kind of stuff. So let me think about this.
Right.
And what I decided to do, I said, let's update it.
Right.
But let's be very, I'm not going to say conservative is the right word, but let's just take into account what they know.
Right.
And so what we wanted to do, or the thought was, let's take what we have and let's make it a little more 3D. Let's clean it up.
Modernize, maybe?
Correct. And
were you fixing things that, I don't want to say you didn't like, but was this the opportunity to, you stared at the original logo so long, was this the chance to say, all right, I'm going to fix what bugs me now?
A little bit of that.
Yeah.
And if you think about the original logo, there's no teal in it.
Yeah.
The original logo is black and white.
Yeah, it's a lot of black and white, actually.
It's all black and white.
Yeah.
The only thing that's teal in there is there's a line running around the triangle. And at this time, again, teal became strongly identified with the team.
You got to put more teal in the logo.
So the idea is, let's take this flat image, let's make it feel more 3D.
Yeah. And it does. It comes across that way.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. There's a faction of people out there, I'm sometimes included in this, who say they sometimes prefer the original logo over the second one. I've even said this before, that if I were, say, buried in a Sharks jersey, this is so morbid, I want the original logo on the crest. How do you feel about that? And I hope that's not an insult. Like this is great too, but it's like, what do you like? Do I like my right arm or my left arm more? That's an impossible thing,
The best way to sum this up is anything that we are going to do from a design perspective, you're never going to please everybody.
Yeah.
And so again, especially in social media and things, when the new logo comes out, right, you're going to have all these people who hate it and don't like it. And I don't read social media. I don't pay attention to it. I never have.
Good for you.
And I just don't. But that being said, the original logo, again, which one do I prefer? They both are representative of their time.
Yeah.
And so for me, they're fine. What we did with the update, for a lot of people, if you don't have the two side by side, they can't tell the difference.
Yeah. It's close enough. I mean,
If you put
very
them
different,
side by side,
but close enough. Yeah.
yes. And
Yeah.
so that was my point when we came
Yeah.
back. And the other, to kind of get back to your initial question, the other thing the team wanted is you had never seen the whole shark.
Yeah, that's true.
And so one of the things that we had also did was we came back when we did the newer version. I also then came back with a whole shark, if you will.
The one that's got a tail on it.
And then we came out. That was his first year that they had the alternate black jerseys with
Right.
the full shark on it.
And that's my next question. You get to design the logo, but the logo goes on things. Obviously, hats and shirts and hoodies and things like that. But how about jerseys? Did you ever get much of a say in how the logo looks on a jersey, or how the jersey looks, I should say?
Well, on the first logo, we not only designed the logo, but the jerseys.
No kidding.
Yeah.
The originals.
The originals.
Wow, which are highly regarded still, by the way.
Yeah, there was still that Sporting News where
Yeah.
they were ranking all the.
They could still
they picked
sell.
it number one all time.
They
I'll
still
take
do
that.
sell. So you did the original jerseys.
Oh, yeah.
Any other versions past that?
Yeah. We came back after we did the remake of the logo. Then we also did those jerseys as well.
Yeah.
Over the years, we've done some, and it depends on which sports manufacturer has the license, has the right to do the uniform. So sometimes if it's been Adidas, it's been Nike. Sometimes those companies like to do the jerseys. But generally speaking, they're main jerseys at crucial times that we've done. I probably haven't designed a jersey for them in it's probably been 5 or 6 years, maybe 7 years since I did a jersey for them. The only thing we've done jersey-wise lately is we'll do some of the jerseys that go to raise money for charities.
Specialty nights, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
If you look at this logo right here, which you did, I guess, more than 15 years ago now at this point?
I guess it's been
about
that long,
there.
has it? Yeah.
Would you change something right here, right now? I mean, you don't have to tell me
Yeah.
what they would be, but do you see that, as you look at this, 10,000 times over,
Yeah.
do you see something that you would do differently?
Actually, I'm okay with this one. This one, again, like I said, you try to do something that stands the test of
Yeah.
time. For me, this one will stand the test of time better than the first one.
Okay.
And the reason I'm going to say that is if you go back and look at the first one, I always said, designing a logo with a shark, when you think about a shark, what do you think about? Well, you're going to think about the dorsal fin, you're going to think about teeth.
Yeah.
Other than that, you've got a cigar with teeth, right? So as you start to think about how do you want to represent a shark? So what we have is, in this design and even the first one, is it really a shark? Not really.
Yeah.
We've designed something that's to represent a feeling, a mood. I talked to you about all of my logos, especially in sports. I like them to have a story. There's motion.
Yeah.
You have the triangle. You have the shark cutting through the triangle. It's creating the motion. The idea of biting the hockey stick, again, more motion. Trying to create, what's the story? Well, when you come in here, fierce, attitude, power, speed. So we try to do something that represents all that. I think, before the Sharks ever played a game, as you mentioned, they were selling merchandise all over the place. Now, we can't predict that.
Yeah.
Do I design stuff to sell? Yes, but you can never predict success. It's like making a movie. Can you predict your movie's going to be number one? No. But you take all the things that your instincts, you do a lot of research, all of those types of things, and you bring all of that information. I compared doing logos to doing a paper in school. I don't just sit down and start drawing something. What I do, I start with research. So, hey, it's a shark. What kind of shark?
Right.
Right? What do we have to represent for the Bay Area? So a lot of the things we'll do, I'm looking at symbols, I'm looking at stuff. So what I tell people when I first sat down to do the shark stuff, we're in California, we're in Northern California, we've got a new sport coming in.
Right.
We have people who don't know it. Think about the times. And I said, surfing, skateboarding, rollerblades.
Rollerblading was huge.
Yeah. So what I was going to do was try to do something that would represent more of California: sun, sand, surf. So surfing and looking at those types of imagery was kind of where I was coming from. And hence, that's why to move from red
Right.
to teal
Right.
worked. And then, again, story.
Yeah.
So the triangle, right? We've got the shark triangle right off the coast.
Right. And
Right.
you've done so many other alternate logos.
Yeah.
One of my favorite is the one that says Northern California on it. Did it come around right at the time of the outdoor game?
Well, now see, I did not do the first one that they did for Northern California. Again, like I said, this is stuff now.
Now I'm losing track here.
NHL Properties had come in,
Okay.
and so that was the outdoor game.
Got it.
So they're going to basically say, we got this.
Got it.
So they're going to do the uniforms and any subsequent logos and all that kind of stuff was
Got
coming out of
it.
the league. Even the Sharks today. The Shark has the Sharks have a staff.
Right. They
Right.
do a lot of their work.
They do all of their work.
Got it.
That's what I'm saying. I don't do much anymore because they have a whole group that does that now.
When you look across sports, I mean, imagine this is among your favorites. You did it. Is there another logo that's like your favorite across the board? Doesn't even have to be hockey. Basketball, baseball, football, soccer.
I'm always looking at logos in all sports. I'll tell you what, some of my favorite logos are in minor league baseball.
Yeah, because they can get pretty creative.
That's the whole thing.
And the name usually is
Yes.
part of the logo creation that makes it,
It makes it fun.
Yeah.
And that's why I think you see a lot of people
Yeah.
wearing minor league stuff.
Yeah.
Because of the name, because of the logo and all that kind of stuff. I think when you get to the professional level, you have more, shall we say, kind of corporate decision
Narrow
makers
opportunities,
and-
right.
Yeah, so they
Right.
tend to hold on. I always tell people today, this logo, the Sharks' current logo, and even the older logo,
Mm-hmm.
they would not exist if you had a team today.
Yeah.
And the reason they would not exist today is because now you have NHL Properties.
Right, they're more.
You have more people involved.
Yep.
The teams are, you got more marketing, all that kind of stuff. So,
Just say it, people in suits.
well, but you also have, I was given free reign.
Yeah.
And,
What an opportunity, huh?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if given free reign, I think you'll get more creativity and all that kind of stuff. We talk about computers.
Yeah.
So now a lot of people don't rely more on the programs, right?
Yeah.
To help them create,
Right.
whereas we're coming up with everything. So you start putting all of this stuff together, and in particular, just the way the league and the way everything works now, and the Sharks logo would not exist today.
Two more things for you. We talk a lot about the absence of black hockey players. There are some in the game. There obviously could be a lot more if it grows in proper channels and in the right directions. And here you are as a black man who designed the logo we all look at. And I don't know how many people are even aware of this. And that's, I want to put a name and a face to this. But specifically that angle of it, I think is so special. And I think it also represents our region well. And it's a cool story. How do you view that side of it?
Well, it's funny because we're coming off toward the end of Black History Month here, and I always tease my wife that at this time of year I get lots of phone calls, right? To do interviews, to speak to classes and all that kind of stuff. Besides the Shark stuff, people know me in different things. In the sports world, I'm going to say there are probably more people who know me for the baseball cards and my artwork, paintings and stuff than they even do the Sharks logo. In the logo business and that kind of stuff, people know me there. In the video game business, they're going to know, they don't even know I do sports stuff.
Sure.
They're going to know, I was the art director for the first God of War, and we do stuff for EA and all that stuff. So it depends on which circle I'm traveling in. But what I will tell you is, when it comes to that, to answer your question, when I was growing up, there was nobody who looked like me doing what I do. And so, part of the reason for me agreeing to do these types of things now is I think that's important.
Yeah.
When it comes to black players in hockey, I want to look beyond the ice. So part of the thing that I was doing when I was going, I was saying, look, there are a lot of opportunities for people of color, not just black, but just people of color in general. And we need people of color everywhere in sports, especially behind the scenes, because this dictates what you see.
Yeah.
So, I had a deal at a movie studio, and I remember this is probably, I'm trying to think if we'd done the Sharks logo. I was like, yeah, we'd done the Sharks logo. So this is like I want to say maybe 92 or 93, and I was pitching ideas and concepts. And I had the top executive at the studio tell me that minorities and black actors and all that kind of stuff couldn't carry major action movies. They were okay to be co-stars, but they couldn't have the leading roles. And this was a business I was in video games, the same type of thing, right? So it was important for me to be in that room.
Yeah.
So that, because think about how characters of color, when you grew up watching television, what did you see? How were black characters portrayed? How were Hispanic characters portrayed? And so one of the big things for me, and in terms of the platform that I have, is to basically make sure that, again, they see people who are doing things that maybe they don't think about. I talk about all the stuff behind the scenes, which is what you guys do.
Right.
Cameramen, salespeople, all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. So yes, eventually we'll have more representation on the ice, but there isn't any reason we shouldn't have more minority representation
Behind the scenes.
everywhere.
That's a great point.
Because I think behind the scenes, to some degree, is even more important than what you see out in front.
You're a performer, whether you're on the field or ice or pitch, and obviously off it too. I think it's a great point.
Well, where are the decisions being made?
Not on the ice,
not on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. The last thing here, and you mentioned it, you're busy, you're accomplished, you're known for a lot of different things. Do you need to design this logo again, or you good with it, or it's hard to top this, right? This will outlive all of us in some regard.
Well, you hope so.
What do you need to do next?
Well, let me put it this way: we can say that now.
Yeah.
But this is sports.
You think it'll change soon?
Well,
but the original idea, and even old logos exist forever.
I'm thinking of some of the logos. I'm thinking of them right now that we designed that have been replaced. Yeah. Right? So, yeah, you would like to think so.
Okay.
I will tell you there's certain logos I think will never be replaced. Yeah. You can start there.
Yankees.
There you go.
Done.
Yankees, Celtics.
Well, maybe the Sharks one will never stray from this general triangle biting a stick.
Well,
and you started it.
Well, that's what you can hope, maybe.
I want to say thank you so much for doing this conversation, and it's a thrill, honestly, to see this every day and know that it came from your brain is so cool. Terry Smith, thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.